One of the phases I think that is not discussed enough in fundraising is really what do you do as a founder or CEO after you raise the round? So you celebrate it, as Sophie just explained, you're happy. And what happens, and I've experienced this many times, is your team will be happy. They will be getting to you and asking you for pay raises, for projects that you stopped over the last year because you said we don't have enough resources to do it. You will maybe have partner companies that get back and say, hey, we should discuss to increase the prices. You always mentioned you don't have any money. Now you've raised a lot. Let's rediscuss. Stuff like that. You're in a good mood as a CEO and you're kind of open to go into these discussions, and time passes. And what you often realize, and I think this happens to many founders and CEOs, that time passes very quickly and you're actually behind the objectives that you promised to your investors. So I think it's really critical, as important that it is to celebrate the fundraising round, but quickly really get back into very good execution and into good management. So it's really about your OKRs, if you work with OKRs, that you keep them in your focus on a quarterly basis. If after the first quarter actually things don't go into the direction that you're very alert, react very quickly, you want to keep being focused. What happens often is that too much money defocuses the management teams or the entire teams, and you start to do stuff that is actually maybe not in your very core, and all that stuff is a problem. So really make sure you manage that well. I think one more point in terms of the management structure is use the opportunity to strengthen your executive board. You probably want to hire 1-2 persons that make you that increase chances that you can actually execute on your key objectives. I think that's a perfect moment right after fundraising rounds to really think about top talent, great people who just increase probabilities that you reach this. So I think all that stuff is really important. I think equally important is to really strengthen the good relationship with investors that you've started to build already in the previous phase. I think now, post-pandemic, I think it's good practice to do calls, periodic calls, can be monthly or quarterly calls, short calls, maybe half-hour update calls where you really address where you are. It should be exciting, but it should also be transparent, also discuss the issues that you're seeing. And I would really kind of meet the key investors or shareholders at least every half year, maybe even a bit more often, for a lunch, for dinner, to really strengthen this personal relationship. Tell them what keeps you up at night, and you will see that this relationship will be very, very useful also over time and in context with future fundraising rounds. One thing that I don't see that often, especially here in Europe, is something that the US startups do much more aggressively, and that's actually triggering a new fundraising round much, much earlier than when you run out of money. So often you see in the US that a company raises a big chunk of money, and then 6 months later, they do another round, sometimes even 3 months later. And there is a saying that you should raise money when you don't need it. And I think it's not so wrong. I'm not saying that this is the right thing for everyone, but it's something I would really consider if things go well, if you keep growing very quickly, whether you not just very aggressively kind of add an additional round. And I think the last thought is really, I think it's much more about the journey than about the destination. So I think many entrepreneurs and founders, they will not be happier once they have a lot of money on their account. So really, I think as much as you want to work hard and focus on your on your startup. Really keep alive besides your startup. Have friends, have family, and enjoy life. Don't just focus too much on work. Don't be a workaholic, but enjoy the process. It's an exciting journey, lots of ups and downs. But if you're in for that, I think it's the best thing probably you can do to build a startup and grow quickly with external fundraising.